Welcome to Brown Grotto Art's 6th Zoom exhibition and our 4th episode of Art on the Rocks, an exhibition talk through with spirits. As many of you know, I'm Rhonda Brown, and with my husband Tom Grotta for 30-some years, we've been promoting the work of dozens of international contemporary artists. Vignettes, 1 venue, 3 exhibitions, our fall event was comprised of 3 different displays. Each of the Vignettes exhibitions was installed in 2 of the 6 rooms in our barn gallery. We've chosen a few images from each. I'll speak about them no longer than a minute. We're adding spirits in our curated cocktail recipe, carefully paired to extend the aesthetic experience. In this episode of Art on the Rocks, we'll talk through works from Dorothy Gill Barnes, Away with Wood, Glenn Kaufman, Retrospective, and an abundance of objects. And introduce a drink, a Mulberry Brandy Bramble, say that 3 times fast, inspired by Dorothy Gill Barnes, who often worked with Mulberry. Vignettes featured more than 3 dozen artists from 9 countries. If you want to see even more, there are catalogs you can order from our website. You can find all the artworks from Vignettes on Artsy after November 22nd. Everyone is currently on mute. If you have questions, you can post them on the chat or ask them at the end of the slides. And now to our curated cocktail and presentation. The Mulberry Brandy Bramble was researched by our talented in-house mixologist, Max Vanwyck. You can learn more about Max's libations and culinary creations at Run, Cook, Sleep, Repeat. Here's a visual how-to. The instructions are simple. Cheers. Now to the talk through. The first of the exhibitions we'll walk through is Dorothy Gill Barnes, Away with Wood. Barnes discovered natural materials as her medium in her late 50s. She studied art in college, but found drawing and painting dull. She never took a course in sculpture. Instead, she taught herself basketry through independent study, an occasional class or workshop, contact with other basket makers, and of course, experimentation. Barnes had an unerring eye for the exquisite in her environment, creating works that enhanced found materials with very little intervention. She spoke about getting acquainted with the materials. For Marshall is an example. In it, Barnes has artfully combined twigs into an elegant assemblage. In Osage turned orange, Barnes interlocks just 3 branches to striking effect. Haystack River Teeth Basket. In this piece, it's made of teeth-shaped knots from old growth trees that are sculpted by the elements. Barnes discovered these river teeth on the ground around the spruce trees in Maine while teaching at Haystack's Mountain School of Craft. You can grab them, she said, and the rest of the tree falls away. These pieces can be 200 years older than the rest of the tree and 12 to 15 inches long. This work has been acquired by the Cincinnati Museum of Art. Barnes paid close attention to such surprises, oddities, and unexpected bits of wonder that are part of the natural environment, as Anne Bremner pointed out in the essay she wrote in our Dorothy Gill Barnes catalog. In this work, Spalted Maple Looking Glass, Barnes draws a viewer's attention to nature's ingenuity with a lens that creates the illusion of depth and breadth in a tiny space. Barnes developed techniques to enhance what she found in nature as well. She had an impressive capacity to manipulate material. She could weave ferns, incorporate lichen into her woven works. She could weave bark, her favorite material. She could plait bark. She could fold it. And she could mold it. Power tools gave her additional options in her work, as did the incorporation of glass. Beginning in 2004, Barnes worked with glass-blowing students at Ohio State University, serving as a visiting artist in their department. The result was a series of works that addressed structure and process while shining a spotlight on natural material. And then there were the dendroglyphs, perhaps Barnes' most unique innovation. The artist would scar bark on trees scheduled to be cut down and harvest the bark months or even years later, after nature had taken its turn at finishing her tree drawings. She spoke of chasing the sound of chainsaws in her neighborhood to find newly cut trees, and of following the helpful advice of friends about trees scheduled to come down that she could scar and wait for the results. At one point, she scarred trees at the Airmont School of Arts and Crafts in Tennessee, coming back in 2 years with a map to find them and display the results to students there. Teaching was of great importance to her. This is a photograph of her curiosities box that she would carry with her when she was teaching courses. She taught at Haystack School of Crafts in Maine, Split Rock in Minnesota, and outside the United States in Australia, Fiji, Denmark, Nova Scotia. She was awarded an Outstanding Educator Award from the Penland School of Crafts in North Carolina. Barnes did not repeat herself. The variety in her work was helpful, she said, and intentional. She worked intuitively, each piece a unique, masterful collaboration with the environment, each highlighting her reverence for the natural world. Len Kaufman is another artist who sought mastery in various techniques and then created a process that was entirely his own. Place, I think, was the most dramatic, important influence in my whole body of work, Kaufman told Josephine Shea in his oral biography for the Archives of American Art. Travel and the study of history, rather than art movements or individuals. And travel he did, from growing up and attending college in Wisconsin to Columbus, Ohio, where he and his wife moved after graduation to complete his ROTC obligation. It was there that he was introduced to weaving by a graduate of the Cranbrook Academy of Art in Michigan. She persuaded him to apply to Cranbrook. His course of study was practical. Kaufman described the process as, you're going to learn to weave upholstery, you're going to learn to weave casement cloth, and you're going to learn to weave rugs. After finishing his degree, he traveled to Denmark on a Fulbright scholarship and traveled throughout Europe while he was there. He described being exposed to fabric dyes rather than heavy pigments, a different kind of brilliance in hand, he called it. He made window hanging, this work, while in Denmark, using monofilament warp and an inlay technique with some sections, some transparent and some opaque. Kaufman described it as a very Scandinavian geometric. It appeared in 2 exhibitions after he returned to the United States and on the cover of a popular shelter magazine. When returning to the U.S., Marion Strengle, Kaufman's mentor at Cranbrook, encouraged him to stop at Dorothy Liebes' studio in New York, as she was looking for a designer. He worked for Liebes for a year, doing exploratory work in rug and carpet design and making pillow tops that combined wild colors and metallic yarns. Kaufman recalled Liebes putting together things like red and pink and orange. He described that as out in left field, but he did not skirt that influence entirely in his own work, as Banner demonstrates. On a separate note, the Dorothy Liebes exhibition, A Bright, a Light, a Dark, is at the Cooper Hewitt through February 4th, 2024. It's well worth a visit if any of you are in the area. Kaufman left New York to return to Cranbrook when he was asked by Strengle to take over her position heading the fiber department. When there, he broadened the department's activities from its weaving focus to include off-loom, non-woven, and surface design work, creating double weaves, rugs, and working with macrame himself. After several years in Michigan in 1967, Kaufman moved to the University of Georgia in Athens to develop a fabric design program there. That year also saw publication of Design on Fabrics, which he wrote with a Cranbrook student, Meta Parker Johnston. His work was the subject of solo exhibitions at Ithaca College Museum of Art and Museum West in San Francisco. And the weavings of Glenn Kaufman also debuted at the Museum of Contemporary Crafts in New York, featuring macrame and double weave. In Athens, Kaufman transitioned to plastics. Plastic was not a good word, Kaufman recalled, but I felt they had great potential. Critics loved these works. You'll find them in all the seminal books by Jacqueline Orr Larson and Mildred Constantine and Betty Freudenheim. Kaufman is credited as one of the first to find beauty in plastics sheeting. While at the University of Georgia, Kaufman was able to continue his travel studies, including to the UK and India, Hong Kong, Thailand, Japan, and Malaysia. In 1974, Anne Sutton, a weaver who Kaufman met in the UK, planned an exhibition of miniature textiles. Kaufman created a glove for the Invitational, which led to a decade of glove explorations, and a nickname in Japan, Tabukoro, or Glove Man. The University of Georgia Fiber Program added a study abroad component in Japan. Kaufman would spend half the year there for 14 years. His time in Japan resulted in another body of work, utilizing a technique that Janet Coppolis and Bruce Metcalf, authors of Makers, A History of American Craft, called A Concept and Creation All His Own. These works involved applique grids and photographic imagery printed with metallic leaf. They served as an autobiographical journal with images from his personal photo archive, often architectural. Many feature a grid which Kaufman said could be seen as shadows on shoji screens or glimpses of a world seen through a window. The grid also reflects the work's woven structure. In some cases, he used existing fabrics, like this antique damask. The fabric in other of these works are woven by Kaufman himself. Kaufman also became interested in Japanese patchwork, which led him to repurpose denim in many formats. He also participated in multimedia presentations that combined hanging fiber, dance, and video projections. The last of the works he created involved use of Japanese fabrics, many of which he had collected from flea markets, to create collages in kimono shapes. Kaufman's embrace of the deep and varied history of textiles from around the world gave his work a gravitas that emerged even when he used non-traditional materials and approaches, noted Ashley Callahan, who wrote the essay in our Glenn Kaufman retrospective catalog. Through his curiosity and creativity, he transformed his travels and experiences as a student, designer, educator, and artist into a remarkable body of art. Use of non-traditional materials and approaches is a good segue to our third exhibition, An Abundance of Objects. In putting together this group, we were intentional about highlighting diversity in ages and approaches. Art purchases are deeply personal. Clients have told us how much their selections mean to them. One couple considers their group of Stephanie Jacques creatures part of our family. Another collector says she does not pass any one of the pieces she has acquired without appreciating how it enhances her life. Acquisition can be a journey of self-discovery. As a collector, learning what moves you on a visceral, instinctive level can be eye-opening. It might be that works that reference nature are ones that evoke an emotional response. There were several of those in the Abundance of exhibition. In The Strong Are Saying Nothing, for example, Lawrence LaBianca used slices of wood to create a mechanical sculpture that looks like a nearly limbless tree. The Strong Are Saying Nothing collapses and then straightens back up with the turn of its crank. Lizzie Ferry creates organic sculptures of willow, birch, heather, bog myrtle, and other locally grown woods. In Willow Ball, the Scottish artist used willow to create a sculpture that looks as if it might have been found in situ. Jeanette Lindersee creates remarkable forms from seaweed and driftwood harvested from the Maine coastline. They look as if they might have arisen from the sea. The varied colors of the seaweed are particularly striking. Christine Joy's swooping sculptures are made from willow and cottonwood that Joy sources in Montana. When making sound, Joy thought the work resembled an ear. In choosing the name, she thought about the sound waves that travel into the air. She says it's one of the few pieces she has made where both sides equally intrigued her. Sound will be joining an important museum collection later this month. For other collectors, it is works that pay contemporary homage to past techniques that have appeal. For Abundance, Tim Johnson created a wall pocket using an ancient technique. He daubed ashes, natural resins, and earth pigments gathered near his home in Spain on a woven structure to create a vessel with strong and subtle surface textures that resembles an artifact. Willow Rogers of New Zealand and Neil and Francine Prince of the United States make pine needle baskets with a coiling technique used by Native Americans and other peoples. Gary Trentham was also inspired by Native Americans. These coiled hanging baskets echo quivers. The fabric of the cocoon shape resembles dried strands of grass. Dominique Demar's shrines, like Rune Bundle Jr., evoke rituals and ceremonies. In 1970, Demar began to hand-make rag papers. The Smithsonian describes how reaching into the slurry to lift a layer of pulp stirred deep-seated memories of fishing trips off the coasts of California and Mexico with his father. The bulky sheets of paper appeared like frozen waves. Inspired by these boyhood memories, Demar stopped weaving and began to fabricate enigmatic sculptures from handmade papers, polished hawthorn twigs, and feathers. Each of his works expresses his conviction that all individuals share traces of common ancient history that combine, in varying degrees, the polarities of masculine and feminine and our primitive needs for physical self-protection and spiritual survival. We've also worked with clients who collected depictions of the human figure. That was another subset of works in the Abundance exhibition. Stephanie Jacques' figure is one-legged with human-like attributes. John McQueen's A Tree and Its Skin Again is a three-dimensional wall work that features two men, one of twigs and the other with bark for skin. Joe Fedderson's cylindrical baskets include stylized depictions of various people, including an android, a TV man, and someone with antlers. The artist, who lives on the Colville Confederated Tribal Reservation in Washington, told his National Archives biographer that he was thinking about who is here, who has survived, and he created a narrative illustrating that, one that is reminiscent of high school pictures that include a grid of student portraits. Guardian Angel by Judy Mulford features a beneficent being who recommends following your dreams. Like most of Mulford's work, it is autobiographical, personal, graphic, and narrative. Each piece I create, she once said, becomes a container of conscious and unconscious thoughts and feelings, a nest, a womb, a secret, a surprise, or a giggle, and always a feeling of being in touch with my female ancestral beginnings. In Mary Giles' Anointed Rank, we find an entire crowd of people. For Giles, the human figure is used both as a formal reference and as an element of commentary. She interpreted and expressed communication and intimacy in relationships in her figurative work. I admire the directness and honesty I see in tribal art, she said, and I try to incorporate those qualities in my own. Sometimes it's simply awe at the manner in which an object was conceived and then accomplished that accounts for its appeal. For example, Nori Hatakeyama's wall-hung complex plating 2 is a technical marvel. It resembles an organic item like coral or honeycomb, and even under close scrutiny has no apparent starting or endpoint. Gerhard Nodell once looked at one of her works and says, "How does she know when she's finished?" Simone Philpin's work inspire wonder too. The folding technique with cotton fiber is one she devised. The works are not stitched or glued. They are held together with dozens of stainless steel pins. Carol Sisson's use of found objects, like this vessel made of tickets, makes viewers stop and reconsider what's precious and what should be disposable. Jin-Suk So combines elegant form and striking color. She transforms stainless steel mesh into an ethereal yet sturdy sculptural medium. Color is also an essential feature of the silk organza cubes in Aperture 1 by Kiyomi Iwata. Venus by Eduardo Portilla and Maria Davila reimagines a fragile textile as an artifact preserved in bronze. Naomi Kobayashi uses simple materials, cotton, paper, and thread, to explore complex themes, including her concern with the ongoing cycles of life and the link between cosmos and everyday life. I am always conscious of nature's blessings, the changing seasons and the cycles of nature myself, she has written. And even now, I move my hand, hoping to express my concept of my work, just as if I were composing a poem. That ends our whirlwind presentation. Thank you for joining our fourth Art on the Rocks, an exhibition talk through with spirits. You can see works by Dorothy Gill Barnes in an artsy viewing room now online through November 21st. And works from an abundance of all the works from an abundance of objects in an artsy viewing room beginning next Wednesday, the 22nd. For more information and images, you can order the 3 catalogs from the Vignettes exhibition individually or in a bundle, which will save you $15. Thanks again to Max at Eat, Cook, Run, Sleep, Repeat, and to our team at Juice Creative, Wilson Beltran, Haley Springer, Mike Kelleher, Mike Pro Percy, and Peter Fisher, who have provided technical and email assistance. If you have any questions, we will take them now. Oh, yeah, good question. How does Glenn Kaufman attach the gold leaf? That is above my pay grade. Sorry to tell you that. But if you send me an email at art@browngrotta, I will contact Ashley Callahan, who wrote the essay for our catalog. Perhaps she knows the answer. Let me see if there's anything else here. Nope, these are all yours. The drink is called a Mulberry Brandy Bramble. And I will say it's pretty good, but one is certainly my limit. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us. We stayed within our time limit, and we'll be back again with another Art on the Rocks from our spring exhibition, which is going to be in May.